So I'm going to ask you to open a new tab and type in the word tinkercad.com. And you're going to click over here in the corner where it says login. And we're going to skip all this stuff on the top. We're going to use our school Gmail, but it's just a little easier if we use personal accounts down here. Okay? And then there's a thing here that says sign in with Google. Once again, if you've already done the Tinkercad module, it might already remember you. You might already have files here, etc. But if you're at the home for Tinkercad and you haven't designed a million things like me, you may need to click on Tinker. You might need to click on something that says 3D design. Over here, there's a button that says create. I don't care how you get there, create, and then I click on a thing that says 3D design. This is what I want to see. This thing called a work plane. All right, this is where we do our work and where we design. Once again, if you've done Tinkercad before, you're like, no kidding, Mr. Pat, I know this already. But if you're brand new to it, it's really not too confusing. You should be able to catch on pretty quick. So we have our work plane here. First thing I want you to do is up here, it makes up an imaginary word for the title of the project, but that's no good. I'm going to type in Steve Aderini because that's my name. And I'm going to say SVG initial keychain, which I'll explain more why we're calling it that. But probably your first and last name, not mine. That would just get weird and confusing. But the other thing I might do is P1 or P4 or whenever you have this particular class. All right, nice and easy. You'll remember what's going on there. All right. Now, what we want to do is put some letters, in fact, our initials. So over here where it says basic shapes, I don't want basic shapes. I want design starters. And when you go to design starters, it gives you a thing here for letters and numbers. Right over here is a giant A. If you click on that, you should see numbers and letters. Let's see. Okay. So click on the letter A here, scroll down. You might have to click on more shapes to get to all the letters, especially if you've got a V or an X or a Y in your initials. All right. Now, instead of doing my initials, I think I will just go with GMS. I can find the G. Here's a G. So I'm going to click and drag, and there's a G. Now, again, you can use the right click on your mouse, or you can use this thing up here in the corner called the tumble cube. So you can move things around and change things. The first thing I want to do is make this letter a little bit larger. I'm going to make it, if I click on these little white boxes here, I'm going to make it 1. And that made it really tall. And I'm going to click on this one and make it 1. And now it's 1 inch wide, 1 inch tall. And when I click out here, it looks like a G. Now, if I turn my work plane like this, which once again I can do with this cube up here, you should be able to do it with 2 fingers, or if you have a mouse, that's usually helpful too. You can ask your teacher for one. If I click here, you might see there's a box here that shows us the height. You can tell it's the height because it's got this little arrow at the top of it. I'm going to make it 0.25. So it's a 1/4 inch thick, and it is 1 inch by 1 inch, and I've got my G there. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for my M. Another thing that really helps over here in this bottom corner of the screen here is a thing called Snap Grid. If you turn that off, it makes things a little easier for you when you're moving these little shapes around. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a set of letters mashed together where you actually squish them into one another, all right? And I could do this, but it's kind of hard to tell the G from the M from the S. So what I want to do is rotate the G and the S a little bit so that it'll make it a little easier when we smash them into the M. By the way, you would be doing this with your initials. Hopefully you have 3 initials. Maybe you have 4. Some people do. I don't know. But look at this down here. You see this curvy arrow thing here? If I click on that, I can turn it around this way. It's kind of doing it in increments of looks like 22.5 degrees. But I thought I could do it with a little bit less. And now when I smash these guys together, and I turn this guy a little bit this way, Do you see how the G and the M and the S are all smashed into each other? By the way, I'm just for simplicity, I'm going to click over here. I've got my M, which is red. That's just confusing to me. Let's make that blue too. So now I've got my G and my M and my S together. They're smashed into each other. I kind of like that the way it is. So I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to click and make a box around all of these guys. And up here, there's a thing called group, or if you hover over it, it says group. And that turns that all into one big piece. Now I can't just play with the S or the M or the G. It's going to act as though that's one continuous object. All right. Now, one more thing we might want to do if we were going to add a ring to this, so we could put like a little carabiner or a little keychain through it. I'm going to go back over here to basic shapes. I'm going to click on this ring here and bring it over. Once again, that ring is too tall. So I'm going to click on this guy here. Come on, you stinker. There we go. This needs to be 0.25. So now it's just the same height as those guys, you can tell. It's a little big being 1 inch by 1 inch. It did that automatically. I didn't want it that way. I'm going to make it 0.5 by 0.5. I think that's plenty big enough to put a keychain through, or maybe one of those little mini carabiner things. So this guy is a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, or 0.5 by 0.5. It's a 1/4 inch tall. But what I noticed as I printed my first copy of this thing was that it ended up being a little skinny on the edge here, afraid that it was going to break. And I thought, okay, there must be a way that I can make the wall of this circle a little bit bigger. And it turns out there is. If I click over here, actually, first thing I want to do is orange and blue, just kind of, I want it all to be the same color. It really doesn't matter when we laser engrave it, but that just makes it a little easier from our design standpoint. You can see those pieces all fit nicely together. And as far as moving this, sometimes you'll see that it kind of clicks from square to square. If I turn down here at the bottom, the snap grid off, it gives me a lot more control when I'm moving this, when I'm sliding this shape in. But what I was talking about a second ago was this idea that this wall of this ring is too skinny. Over here where it says wall thickness, again, I dropped down this little arrow here where it says tube because that's selected, right? Instead of 0.125 here, I'm going to make it 0.2, which is going to make that a little fatter. You can see right away this thing got a little bit beefier, and I think that's not going to be as likely to break when you put some sort of a key ring through there or a carabiner or something. You want to put this initial name tag on your backpack or hang it from your pocketbook or something. I think we want that ring to be a little more stout. So yes, you want to make sure that wall thickness over here is 0.2. Again, my concern is I don't want this to look like an O, so that it looks like my initials are OGMS or O, whatever your initials are. We want to make sure it's no mistake that is a key ring hole there. But anyway, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. It's exactly the same height as the rest of the name tag. And the last step we have to do is highlight this and group it. If I hover over here, it says group. And now that's all one piece. You can see all the lines went away. And even if I click on this guy and I make it bigger or smaller, it all goes together. It doesn't treat the G, the M, the S, and this little ring here as separate items. It's all one darn thing. So I'm pretty happy with this. Once again, you would want to make sure your name, first and last name, is in this title over here. And then you come over here to export. And this is where it's kind of important. You're doing this for laser engraving. I'm going to click the export button here. And way down at the bottom, it says for lasercutting.svg. So download that. And now, guess what? It's in your download folder. And if you have a folder down here called downloads, you should see it. There's my SVG file. And you will attach that in an email and send it to your teacher with a polite email, possibly in the subject line saying, please print my initials or my initial name tag. And something like thank you in the body of the email, and then you click on the little paper clippy looking thing down at the bottom, and you can attach that file, send it to your teacher, and they will burn one of these with the laser engraver. And actually, we're not even really engraving in this project. It's just going to cut out all these lines, and you'll end up with a piece of wood shaped like this that's been cut out by the laser, which is pretty darn cool.